the Enterprise Digital Podcast with Ian and Barclay Ray, navigating the ever-expanding service management maze.
Hello and welcome to yet another episode of the Enterprise Digital Podcast. As you can see, my name there says Barclay Ray. I think that's me. And once more, I'm joined by Ian Aitchison. Ian, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Yes. Coping despite the fact the weather is miserable. I'm doing good.
Well, yes, it is dark and cold and wet, and
It is.
fine. That's the kind of cave-like background that I crawled out from as a youngster in the north. Normally, at this time, you may surprise me, but normally you've got some kind of trivial stuff to bring to the discussion and get us on our way. Have you got that this week?
Yeah, I thought we needed to raise the standard of our trivia a little bit rather than mice and cockroaches. I thought we needed to get a little more highbrow. So I thought today we'd talk about some recent trivia news in the world of particle physics. How is your particle physics?
It's lagging slightly, I'd say.
Okay. Yeah. So you may not have seen the news in the last week. You may not have done. Obviously, those of us that are very close to particle physics would have heard about it immediately. But
I haven't opened my copy of Particle Physics monthly.
So
From cockroaches, anyway, there's nothing lowbrow about them. They may be small creatures, but they still have some value.
they do have some value. It's true, but you can't fit 1 billion of those in your thumbnail at any one time, can you? Yes. Let me explain, because we want to get on to our guest. So we'll make this quick. It's very small trivia. I just thought it was quite interesting. NASA, over the last week, just announced that over 10 years now, they've been processing some data that was collected by balloons over the North Pole, signals and the effect of particles on ice. And they were detecting this. And they recently announced that they have discovered in that data that was collected above the North Pole, they've discovered a particle which is of an unknown type, never known before, or evidence of one. It's a problem because we still don't have an explanation for what these anomalies we are observing are. What we do know is they're most likely not representing neutrinos. Neutrinos are an amazing thing. No charge, the smallest mass of all subatomic particles, and you can fit 1 billion in your fingernail. So that's quite a lot. We're familiar with neutrinos anyway, but apparently there's some of that.
Isn't that pizzeria just down the road? Neutrinos.
Fine Chianti. That's true.
Yeah.
It's fine Chianti. But yes, it's very interesting. So a whole new possible type of cosmic particle, cosmic ray has been detected, and nobody knows what it is. And they found it in the North Pole. And the only other thing I'd say is, I don't know if you remember the film The Thing, with a head that crawls across the floor. That started with some signals detected in the North Pole. So I'm just saying, this could be the same thing.
Well, that's fascinating. Can we move on?
Yeah, okay. I did my best. All right, well, there's moving swiftly on from particle physics.
Can't think of a link. I mean, how many billion particles, neutrinos, I could squeeze into my thumbnail.
They travel at nearly the speed of light.
Nobody knows what they do or why they exist. So I'd suggest it's kind of not hugely gonna. Well, let's see if we can build that into our podcast.
Let's see if we can build that in. I think to do that, we're going to need a guest, aren't we? We're going to need a high quality guest to bring us back down to ground, bring us back to reality.
Indeed.
Shall I bring on our guest while you enjoy?
Yes, please do. For goodness sake, let's just do that.
Welcome, Sophie Hussy. Hi, Sophie.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me today. Great. I loved the intro. And the neutrinos, I might go to that restaurant this weekend myself.
Right. Yeah. It's a chain, isn't it? So, I mean, they've got 1 billion different. Anyway,
You're the same.
Despite Ian trying to raise the tone of the podcast, we'll do our best to keep it down in the dungeon. Sophie, delighted to have you on. Welcome. Really nice to see you. Tell us just a little bit about yourself? I mean, I know you're very active out there on social and doing lots of stuff, but for those that don't know you, just a quick sketch, and then, what sort of things you're doing at the moment.
Of course. So, hello, everybody. I'm Sophie Hussy. I am a service management and leadership consultant. Been working in tech for about 25 years, starting in the techie world, not a natural techie. And as I think most people, I fell into service management as well as falling into tech. And I've been in service management in like official capacity for best part of like 12, 15 years. I was doing it before, I just didn't necessarily know that. And then in the last 4 years, I've been running my own consultancy. I've recently had a book published this year, which was scary and exciting and brilliant all at the same time. I'm a STEM ambassador. So
Really exciting.
it's called Dramatically Honest, but it should probably be called scary and exciting at the same time. STEM ambassador, mentor, big advocate for supporting people in their career growth, right from school age all the way through to adulthood. That's me in a nutshell.
Fantastic.
And for you this week, we were all at before this podcast was recorded, we were all at the ITSM UK conference in Milton Keynes, the magical Milton Keynes. Right.
With all the roundabouts.
So that was your first experience of ITSM UK, is that right?
It was. First time I had serious FOMO last year when I saw all the posts of everybody going and all the speakers. So this year I went and I found it really, really interesting. I think the caliber of the speakers, I think there was too many to choose from, which was like a real positive, but each of the 4 sessions in each of the slots, it was really difficult to pick who to go to and listen to. And great to connect to people. So I thoroughly enjoyed your session, South Barclay. I thought it was really good. I thought my hometown's just like 20 miles from there. So it was nice to be home, but also a bit weird at the same time.
Well, Milton Keynes, a place that I've been visiting for many years for different work reasons. I know it kind of well. I haven't been for a while. Try and stay away as much as possible. It's definitely improved as a place, and that venue is new to me. I'm so continually delighted by the progress of ITSM UK, just having been involved with it myself for a number of years and seeing where it was going and how it's progressing forward. So I thought it was an event. Ian, you were there for the second day, weren't you?
I was relatively low key, but I did enjoy the sessions I was in and the meetings that I had, and I thought it was nice. Yeah, it was good. Yeah, it was a slightly unusual layout. That was the only thing. I found myself getting a little bit lost and confused, finding different rooms and locating was in different floors. And
the rooms for the actual event were all on the same level, but the other rooms, the lifts just completely confused me. I didn't know which floor was on which. And then, of course, built around a stadium, all the hotel rooms are all the way around. So if you're unlucky, I think like you, Sophie, I think you only it was like all the way around the stadium.
Yes.
I was about halfway, but I did see you at one point.
Yeah, that was when I had locked myself out of my room by mistake and I had to do the 5-mile hike back to reception to beg, please can I have another key? Because I'm stuck.
Well, they always say that Milton Keynes is a bit like the closest to America in the UK, and the hotels are always to catch up with that. Anyway, great to have you on. We'll have a discussion in a second. Before that, let's stop for a cream bun and a cup of peppermint tea. So we're introduced. We've had a little bit of chat about ITSMF. Let's get into the discussion I had published this year, and I know a topic that's of interest to you. We're talking about leadership. I mean, what's your main kind of proposition around about that? Where do you stand on what makes great leadership and what doesn't? That one.
I think, well, there's 2 parts to it. So one of the reasons for the book is I think it's really important for leadership to be authentic, or anybody actually in an organisation to be their authentic selves and creating a safe space for them to do that. And I think with that comes empathy. I think that's the other side of leadership that I think has got to be an absolute fundamental that needs to be there all the time. And I think for me, the reason I wrote the book was because I felt throughout my career there's times where I've needed to sort of almost bend and flex where I haven't necessarily I felt comfortable, certainly in my younger career, to be my true self. And I thought that shouldn't be the norm. That shouldn't be something that people have to deal with. So I wanted to give people an opportunity to maybe have some practical tips and hear some stories about how I've challenged sort of certain situations so that I can just be me, which is a bit quirky and a bit weird, but also to lead. Like I said, you don't need to be in a management position to lead. You can be in any position to lead. And in order to get people motivated and inspired, if you're being who you truly are and are comfortable doing so, that's more likely to bring people on the journey. And that was really the key things that sparked me off. So being your authentic self, but also considering the humans, because we need to consider humans in everything we do.
So that's really interesting. So I wrote down a little question here. We talk about being authentic and being our true selves. So for our millions of listeners, because we do have millions, how would something go
under your thumbnail?
Indeed, billions, indeed, billions. How would one know? It's a strange question. How would you know if you're not being your true self? What would be sort of the indication that you're not being yourself?
I would say that you're exhausted because you're masking all the time and you're doing things that maybe don't necessarily align with your values and who you are all the time. So it's almost like putting on a pair of shoes that don't fit and then having to walk for miles and miles all day in these shoes that are squashing you. I think that there is an element of masking that exists no matter how authentic you are, because in a professional scenario, potentially there's things of your personality that you don't want to share. But I think ultimately, if you're not being yourself, it's just going to feel uncomfortable. I know for me personally, in my younger career, like a young female working in the tech industry where it's very male dominated and trying to figure out how am I going to fit in here? I don't see people like me in this room. What do I do? That my jokes would be a particular type of joke, or I'd sort of use humor in a way to sort of almost deflect from my personality and there'd be times where I'd try and make myself smaller. I wouldn't talk as much. But I have an opinion, I have a voice, and I would want to get that out there. And by holding it in, I'd get to the end of the day and I'd just be like, oh gosh, I am so tired. I'm exhausted, the physical strain almost from having to hold it all in.
You're spending your whole day feeling awkward and uncomfortable, behaving in a way that doesn't feel natural to you. You feel like I'm having to behave this way and it's not the way I would normally behave, but I feel I should.
Yes.
Okay. So here's a great thing that happened to me. I'm interested in your perspective on this. When I was very young and very little, I started working in nightclubs actually, and I was a nightclub manager and licensee and things. And as I moved into that role, the previous manager of the nightclub said to me, he said, Ian, you're moving into this manager role soon. The most important thing you need to do is you need to walk like a manager. And what he said, well, you walk across the floor, people see you. They need to know that you're the one that's running the shop. They need to know that you're the head guy here. So you need to, walk tall and with confidence. And at first that felt uncomfortable, but I understand what I was being told. I understood that you have to grow into a particular role and personality. And it became more natural, I think, fairly quickly in that role and, develop into it. But if you hadn't told me to move out of my comfort zone, I might have carried on behaving in an unsuitable way for a manager. Sort of makes sense. Is there something about you do still need to push yourself into a slightly different shape? Uncomfortable sometimes is good.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I talked about this quite a lot actually with some of the people that I met at the ITSM conference earlier on in the week. I'm actually an introvert and I'm actually really shy, but in the workplace, I don't come across like that because I've had to push constantly to live in an extrovert's world. And certainly in a service management world or in a leadership position, you've got to stand up at the front. You've got to talk to people. You've got to engage people, invite them in. And there's also an element of showing a level of vulnerability that will bring people in. So I would always encourage people to think, you obviously stay in places where are comfortable to a degree, but if you're not pushing yourself, if you're not pushing your boundaries, you're never going to evolve. And even as an adult, I mean, there's so much to learn. At what point do we stop learning and growing? I would always encourage people to just keep trying to push their boundaries. I wouldn't go and sit in a room with spiders because that would be pushing my boundaries a little bit too fast. But speaking at events and engaging with people and pushing myself in those situations where I'd naturally just like to stay in the corner and be quiet, I know that's not going to support me and my growth and as a person as well as professionally.
Yeah.
So it's trying to find that sort of sweet spot and that standing taller. But I also think in that example as well that you had when you were younger, there is something about standing tall and standing proud. You don't have to be the biggest or the loudest person in the room,
Absolutely.
but knowing that who you are and having a different type of confidence, the courage from within to push those boundaries, I think that is such a strength to have
Yeah.
and something to work on for everybody.
And I had to be coached to consciously push myself to behave like that because it hadn't occurred to me that that's kind of, you have to think about how other people see you. And you have to think about how you appear to other people when you talk to them and communicate and so on. And actually, sometimes you do have to think about that and grow yourself into that consciously.
Definitely. I think
There's the challenge as well, in the authenticity part. I'm thinking back myself that if I was being authentic or inauthentic when I was 23, it probably didn't make any difference because I didn't know. And so you are growing. You said you were changing. I mean, I probably had a slightly different management learning experience, which is that I worked for. I was very lucky to work for 2 or 3 really, really great mentoring managers who just encouraged me, and just by observing them, I go a huge amount. So when we're talking about authenticity, are we challenging? Is that more for people moving further up in, when they are managers or leaders, or are we talking about, you saying that you don't have to be a manager to be a leader, you can lead any position? The authenticity part, I think it is a challenge for some people because they may go into an organization that they might want to work in or they're happy to work in, but the people that they're working with are just different from them, and they have to find a balance between
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it?
being completely authentic if what they do is completely different from the they're working with.
Yeah, I think it's finding your balance in that respect. So the thing that I would always encourage people to do, whether you are in a leadership position or not, is understand what your values are. What are you working from? What is your foundation? If you know what's important to you, and it needs to be like 4 to 7 key words that are a value of things that make you who you are. It's then figuring out in those circumstances where you're working in an environment where you may be working with people that are completely different to you, and you've got to sort of adjust your approach, your stance, is then thinking, well, how can I still be true to my values and be myself, but in a way that is suitable for those people? I think, like, in any job that we do as a leader or as a consultant, you go into your client, I can't be normal Sophie when I walk in the door day one with a new client. I've got to figure out the lay of the land. I've got to understand what they want and what they need. And that's where the values bit comes into play, because if you can understand why people are the way that they are, why the organization is the way that it is, you can then try and correlate those two things together and see where can you mesh, where are those common spaces that you can exist in, even though they may have a completely different way of working. Even if it's like a toxic culture, there's still going to be something there that you can cling on to and just say, right, I'm going to be this one thing. If my one thing is like, I'm going to be open and honest all the time, I'm going to consistently be that. But if some of the people that I'm talking to aren't necessarily receptive to my level of honesty, then I will adjust what I'm saying, that I'm still true to who I am, but in a way that they can receive the information.
So playing that back, are we saying authenticity is being true to our values?
Yes, I think so. Because your values are linked to your personality. All of your experiences.
Yeah.
I think, like, part of who I am, I love Lego, I love Star Wars, I love all sorts of different things. That's not necessarily relevant in the workplace, but those sorts of things that sort of make me slightly different, I can start conversations with people and ask them about their interests. And I think it's figuring out those spaces where my values are to connect with, well, not to connect with people, but it's to be open and honest and transparent. by opening up that little bit of vulnerability of who I am and that extra little bit that maybe people didn't ask, but still true to my values. I'm still being who I am, but maybe that'll encourage those people that I'm talking to be the same in return.
Yeah, it's the humanity, isn't it? I met with a IT leader this week. He runs a global service management IT organization. And within 2 minutes of starting the meeting, I knew he played golf.
Mhm.
It wasn't, the meeting wasn't about golf, but he had some golf clubs in the back of his room. I commented on the golf clubs, and he showed his humanity and that he was a real person. And Barclay, we've talked about this before as well. I think it's great having Zoom style meetings because you bring your real life into the meeting. There's things in the background that comes in. There's interesting books. There's things with that humanity that makes it easier to connect to and makes us more real, genuine people. And that builds trust, builds honesty, all of these things, because it's you're opening the true you. Oh gosh, that's good. How about that?
Well, I mean, it's definitely, from the consultancy perspective, and for a long time, 30-odd years, and I teach it and everything. And it is about having values and sticking to, whether you call it a code of practice or whatever, but you stick to some things that build respect, integrity, reputation. Reputation is everything. I mean, in that role. And it's hard to build and very easy to trash it. But it's the thing that you can always fall back on if if you've got a moral dilemma if you're in with a client and they're asking you something and where you may have an interest, or it's always better to be transparent and be absolutely clear about what you're trying to do, or if you express that, or just there's always a moral compass somewhere that kind of goes, no, that's not the right thing to be. This way, which probably does come back to what we're saying about, whether you're doing that in your natural voice or, you slightly, like me, I had to modify my language, my accent when I came out of Scotland, because when I came here at first, nobody understood me. So there are things that are practical to do, and then there's also things that you can fall back in. One question I'm going to ask, and I don't want to go down the wrong wormhole with this, but I think it's important. To me, it seems that there's more, that there are more visible women out there being confident and comfortable about being authentic. And I think, the other side of that is, does that mean that it's been more difficult for women to be authentic in the past? And as I say, I don't want to.
Yeah, of course.
Surely that's the case, is it? Or not?
Yes. One of the things that I did when I was writing the book was I did a couple of surveys. I did some surveys on LinkedIn, and then I did like an anonymous one. And one of the questions I asked is, do you think it's easier to be authentic in the workplace as a male as opposed to a female? And they were close, but it was a little bit more. It seems that men are more comfortable being authentic in the workplace, but I don't know if that's partly because of perception as opposed to reality. I think for me personally, the book I've written and the sort of approach that I take with everything anyway is I am a woman in tech, and I have grown up in it's still male dominated, but it was more so when I was younger. So that's my viewpoint, but I've always tried to be more objective and have those conversations to make sure that everything that I'm talking about, everybody that I'm working with, I'm just being completely consistent across it. I don't really care what gender people are. I'm more interested in actually, what's your experience? How can I help you? Where can you get support? What support can I give you? And will my experience, ignoring the fact that I'm female, give you any comfort or give you any support? I think it's a very interesting topic. I think you've probably got like a CS podcast in that topic just alone. But it's a good question though. I think, yeah, I did get mixed results. I do think it's slightly, possibly more easy for men to be authentic in the workplace, but I can't say that for definite because I'm not a girl. I mean, what do you guys think? Do you find it easy to be yourselves?
I think confidence allows you to worry less about how you are perceived. And I don't mean overconfidence. I just mean personal confidence. You can be more relaxed in your behavior. And I don't mean laid back, but I mean not so uptight about things. And you can be direct, or you can be subtle, or you can be light-hearted, or you can be serious. If you've got an underlying confidence that it's okay and you've got this and that's fine, then I think it's easier to be authentic in that way. I think if you're insecure, it's harder to be authentic. If you feel like you don't know what's going to happen and you might say the wrong thing and you might cause trouble, or you might get yourself in trouble, or you might end up in a bad place, you tend to draw back and be more careful and be probably inauthentic.
But I mean, that's the thing about, the meme of, men always not worrying about going for jobs that are beyond their capability, and women not applying for jobs that are within their capability for a whole number of reasons. And that's what I mean in terms of whether it's authenticity or it's just the way it's been for a long time, is that,
Could well be.
rule that environment. So I mean, I hope it's getting better. And the first point I was making was that there seems to be more visibility. People right there going, this is me, I'm comfortable with being in my own skin and so on, and that's take me as I am kind of thing. Just sort of rounding off the conversation, because it's interesting about we've covered a couple of different points there, but just back to the kind of leadership. I mean, what do you think it takes? Do you think you can teach leadership, or is it something that is inherent in personality, or is it a bit of a mix?
I think it's probably a mix, because I think to lead, there are so many qualities that you need to have, which you can learn, that then enable you to be a leader. Like I was saying at the sort of outset, you don't need to be a manager to lead. And I think that's something people often get confused with, the difference between being in a management position and assuming that that person can actually lead. Just because you've been promoted doesn't mean that you're actually capable of doing that next thing. So I think exactly what you were saying there, Ian, about the confidence side of stuff, that there's the knowledge, the experience, stakeholder management skills, your empathy. There's so many things that make a leader someone that you look at them, you're like, oh gosh, I love what they're saying. I'm inspired by them. I'm motivated by them. I'm listening to what they're saying. I want to know more. I think you can learn some of those things, but it needs the right kind of self-awareness. That I think the values, again, understanding what's important to you, where your boundaries are, and really taking that time to reflect of who is it that I want to be, and then looking outwardly to say, right, of the people that I've engaged with over the years, anybody in a leadership position, what bits do I like? What bits don't I like? And what does that mean to me? What am I going to do differently? Or what bits am I going to pinch and think, actually, that's important to me? So it's a great question. I think it's one of those debates that's been out there for a while in terms of, can a leader be born, or can they learn how to do it? And I do think it's a mixture of both. But you do see like young children who obviously are going like born leaders because of the approach they take. But again, it goes to that confidence piece. And then at the same time, like for me, I was the shy girl that was bullied at school and all of that sort of stuff. And I wouldn't speak up in like group settings. But then I went to university and started my first job as a service desk analyst. And I'm like, do you know what? I don't want to do that anymore. I'm going to push, because I want to be somebody that makes a difference and can support other people. So I think I did have some of the skills already, but I've learned over the years how to be more of a leader as well.
And I think bringing that back to the sort of topics we often circle around in this podcast, let's look in the service desk. Let's look at people that are taking their first job into IT, into the industry. They're often on a service desk, help desk type role. That's really good for building confidence, because you have to speak directly to people that need your help. They may not be happy, they may be under pressure, or indeed you can make them really happy and you can feel really good about what you do and you can solve problems. So we often talk about the skills in the service desk and empathy and so on. it's a builder as well, isn't it? I mean, it strengthens you as a person doing that job.
I think anybody working in tech should work on the service desk, at least for a period of time, because then you get exactly all of those things. I once spent 45 minutes trying to explain to somebody who didn't understand computers how to drag and drop something. And unfortunately, it was Lotus Notes replication, and they had to drag and drop the thing. And I was running out of ways to explain how to left click, hold it down and move it and let go. But that experience taught me patience, the nth degree. I didn't think I would ever need. And I think that sort of skill, I think service desk is such a real solid a starting point for anybody. Or even if somebody joins tech higher up the food chain, not that service desk is low down in the food chain, but more a technical capability potentially. That person should go and spend a month on the service desk to feel what it's like.
I used to insist. I had one place I worked. I insisted that the trainee programmers came and spent time on my service desk. I had a bit of a battle with the application director at the time, but it gave them such a different perspective before they even started looking at what they were doing, that they had to deal with people that were just angry and upset and frustrated, unhappy. Well, it's because something that you built.
You broke it.
Really? Yeah. So here's a challenging question. Do you think that people with a service management background make better leaders than people in an IT organization that don't go through that service management path?
Controversially, I'm going to say yes. Yes, I think they do. But interestingly enough, one of the sessions I went to earlier in the week was about how difficult it is for service management professionals to break into the C-suite. But the interesting thing about service management, obviously, is that it covered the entirety of a tech function and beyond if you're doing enterprise service management. So you're dipping into everything. You've got a breadth of knowledge and experience. Often, if you're infrastructure or if you're development, you are in a vertical. We are a horizontal. But also, because of the nature of the beast that what we do, it's not just the service desk who speak to your internal or external customers. We speak to everybody, all of our stakeholders, all of the time. And I think that gives us a more holistic view and I think more solid foundations to work from to be able to inspire, encourage and lead, because we recognize every moving part of the machine to make it work together.
And again, I'm thinking there's a parallel once again with product managers and product management, which often comes up because they're a horizontal function in an organization and they have to speak to everybody and they're seen as leaders without being actual managers of people. It's that same horizontal skills, communication skills, empathy, negotiation, all of these things.
Yeah, that's a great. That was the same session. It was big, Mark Boyer.
Yeah.
And actually, interestingly, some of that was about confidence as well, about how we sell ourselves.
Yeah.
I think it was more the gap between business skills as well and I suppose understand and being able to express those things.
Yeah. The language we use.
So that was a very interesting session. I encourage everybody to tune into Dolwheel. I think that, we had this discussion recently about service desk as a career builder as well, and giving people exposure to a number of different areas. If that's going to be moved by AI, then we've got a bit of a problem as to how we bring people in and maybe that's a call for another day. I think we're time's up. That was really interesting discussion, Sophie. Thank you very much. We shall ponder it with a small glass of white port. Okay, that was a great session. Really great to have you on, Sophie. How do people get a hold of you? How do they find you? Your book.
Well, the book is available on all good bookstores. That's the thing that they say on telly, isn't it? When famous people write books.
Bookstores in
problem. Yeah, hopefully it'll be on terrible shops as well as good shops. But LinkedIn is the best way to get me. My company website, of course, but LinkedIn, I'm quite active on that. So just find me. My profile is just Sophie Hussy. Nice and simple at the end.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much, and hopefully we'll see you back on here again. Ian, are you going to pose Sophie a difficult question? You have one.
I was wondering whether to ask what is your favourite subatomic particle. That may be too much of a curveball too quickly. I don't have one either. I was going to ask you about whether you've played the video game Lego Star Wars, because that's the perfect blend of your two favourite things you mentioned earlier, both Lego and Star Wars. Lego Star Wars, great video game. My kids used to love it. But the question I'm going to ask you relates to the Italian restaurant that we mentioned earlier. You're sitting down at that Italian restaurant. You just arrived. The waiter comes over. You're going to have a starter. What would you choose? I think primi, isn't it, in Italian? What would you choose as a starter in an Italian restaurant? What's your preference?
Hands down, every time bruschetta. My favourite. And I was in Italy in the summer, and it basically cooked what I had for every starter, every meal for 2 weeks.
Fantastic. Very confident answer there. No hesitation. Very good. Very honest and authentic.
Yeah. Very good. We've got there. Brilliant stuff, Sophie. Thank you very much for joining. We'll see you again. Ian, we'll see you next time. Thank you very much. See you again on the Enterprise Digital.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.